Brothers and sisters, do people ever disagree? Husbands and wives, do you always agree? Do parents and children ever agree? Is there ever disagreement in the workplace? Is there disagreement between the boss and the employees? Is there disagreement between employees and employees? Is there disagreement sometimes even in the church? Do Christians ever disagree? Let me tell you the answer. Yes! Of course they do. Listen, all people disagree at times. Disagreement is inevitable. It is going to happen. You know why? Because I discovered that disagreement is a part of life. I'm going to try to help somebody today. In our text, we are told that even the Apostle Paul, y'all know Paul, don't you? Paul, the called of God. Paul, the righteous one. Paul, the missionary. Paul, the writer of over 1/3 of the New Testament. Yes, that same Paul had to deal with disagreement. And guess what? It wasn't with one of the many enemies that he made while preaching the good news of Jesus Christ. But Paul had a disagreement with one who worked side by side with him in ministry. Paul had a disagreement with his fellow partner and fellow believer in ministry named Barnabas. And let me pause right here and say that believers are not perfect. Say it again, all right. Believers are not perfect. And Dr. Hagin, I'm so glad that it is not God's requirement that a person must be perfect before he can use them. You know why? Because none of us would qualify to be used by God. I don't know about you, but I thank God for his mercy and his grace. Listen, brothers and sisters, we are forgiven, but we're not perfect. And those of you who are looking for perfection in the life of the believer on this side of glory, you are going to be disappointed. Paul and Barnabas, both godly men who loved Jesus, had a disagreement. What was the disagreement over, Pastor Wood? They disagreed over an opinion. Lord have mercy. Tell your neighbor, it was an opinion. This is the story behind the opinion. The Apostle Paul, after ministering in Antioch for a while, says to his co-laborer Barnabas, he says, let us go back and visit the believers in all the towns where we preach the word of the Lord and see how they're doing. Notice with me that Paul used the words us. He said, let us go back. And then he said, let us go back where we. Somebody say we. We preached. Paul was asking that he and Barnabas make the trip to revisit the churches that they established. You know what I found out? That sometimes disagreement occurs when somebody wants somebody else to tag along. Oh, come on now. Come on. Have you ever wanted to go somewhere special with someone and they wanted to invite others to tag along? It surely can bring about discouragement. Who was it, Pastor, that Barnabas wanted to invite to go along with him and Paul? Guess who it was? It was cousin John Mark. Come on. Can I do it this way? Can I do it this way? Now, this was a problem for Paul because John Mark started out on the first trip with Paul and Barnabas, but deserted them when they got to Pamphylia. In other words, John Mark quit the work of ministry and went back home to Jerusalem. Now, New Providence and friends, I don't know why John Mark left or deserted them. Maybe he was tired of being on the road all the time. Or maybe he got tired of being chased out of cities for preaching the gospel of Jesus Christ. Maybe he got tired of his life being threatened. Or maybe John Mark thought that the work of ministry was just too hard and demanding. I don't know why John Mark left, but I know that the Apostle Paul had a problem with his desertion. So when Barnabas tells Paul that he wants to take cousin John Mark to go with them on this trip, the Bible says that a sharp disagreement took place between Paul and Barnabas that caused them to separate from each other. Now, deacons, it's almost hard to believe that Paul, I'm talking about the apostle, had such a disagreement that he and Barnabas had to part company. And guess what? It was all over a matter of opinion. Disagreements over matters of opinion are a major problem in many of our homes, in our workplaces, and even in our churches. Tell your neighbor, a matter of opinion. Let me give you an example that can happen in church when people have different matters of opinion. One member of a church said to another member, I don't think when we come to church during our worship service that we should have all this clapping and praising the Lord. Church should be a time of reverence. Well, the other members said, I think that church should be a time of rejoicing and praise. The other member responded, well, the Bible says that God's house is to be a house of prayer, and we ought to be still and know that he is God. Yes, said the other member, but the Bible also says, make a joyful noise unto the Lord. Whose opinion was right and who was wrong? They both were right. But the problem comes when a person becomes disagreeable in attitude and speech and seeks to hurt the person that they disagree with. Can I do a teaching here today? Brothers and sisters, let me simply share with you some things that I have learned about disagreement. Can I share a few things? First of all, I've learned that disagreements are going to happen. Lean over to your neighbor. Disagreements are going to happen. Guess what? Disagreement is human nature. It's human nature to disagree with one another at times. You know why? Because we are all different people. Now listen here. We're made out of all the same stuff. Tell your neighbor, you made out of dirt like me. But we are different in spirit, in attitude, and in our thinking. Just as there is a difference in male and female, there's also a difference in all of us. We all have different backgrounds, different upbringings, with different ages. We have different parent skills. We have different interests. We have different talents. And we also have different abilities. In other words, what are you saying, Pastor? This is what I'm saying. I'm saying we will not always see eye to eye on everything in life. Our opinions will cause us to disagree sometimes. But just because we have different opinions doesn't mean that we have to become disagreeable. Okay, y'all. First thing, disagreements are going to happen. But secondly, I've learned and discovered that disagreements can turn dangerous. I knew it was going to be like this here today. Why, Pastor Wood? Because disagreements can often lead to some other things which are not so good. Listen to me good. Listen to me. When we become disagreeable with people, if we are not careful, the disagreement can lead to anger. And disagreement can lead to uncontrollable anger, which opens the door to the devil. And check this out. The devil uses the tool of anger to pry his way into our lives. He uses anger to usher in sin. Come on now. How many of us are willing to admit that we have said, and done some things out of anger that we wish we never would have said or never would have done. You do know that if you put a letter D in front of anger, you have danger. What you saying, Pastor? I'm saying that anger can lead to danger. Disagreements can turn dangerous. Yeah, okay. Disagreements, I told you, are going to happen. And disagreements can turn deadly. But thirdly, let me tell you that I've learned that disagreements can be solved. Oh, Lord. Turn to your neighbor and say, disagreements can be solved. There is a solution. There is a way to overcome disagreements. How, Pastor Wood? I'm glad you asked. Most disagreements are solvable if we do what is right. That is, what is it, Reverend? Making peace and not war. In other words, if we would just work at being patient and not intolerant. Lord have mercy. And let me give a solution to some of us who are here today. Another solution to solve disagreements, we just got to simply learn how to compromise. Oh, look. Let me say right here that some of us have the wrong understanding of compromise or making concessions. Compromising is not a matter of weakness, but it's a matter of inner strength. Oh, come on, y'all. Come on. Listen, if you are the type of person who always has to have things done your way, or if your opinion is the only opinion that matters, then you are a pitiful person and you will never have a healthy relationship with others. Listen, saints, you cannot always have your way. You know why? Because sometimes your way is wrong. We all say we all. We all miss the mark sometimes. Sometimes you and I have to learn to compromise. Now understand me good. I'm not talking about compromising what God has declared in his word. but things that are everyday life choices. We must learn to compromise. I'm here to tell you that if we learn how to compromise, some of our disagreements can be solved. All right. But now, this is what y'all been waiting for. I must confess a hard truth about disagreement we find in the text. And it is this: there are some disagreements that become too sharp, which ultimately lead to separation. Oh, Lord, have mercy. Now understand me clear. I am in no way justifying separation amongst believers. For I believe that if anybody ought to be in unity, it ought to be believers. But there comes a time of separation when your anger leads you to danger. It may possibly become a time for separation. Listen to me good. If you are married and your husband or your wife thinks it is their God-given right to hit and abuse you, then I'm here to tell you it might be time to think about, oh, come on now, separation. When anger leads to, it is time to separate. Okay. Oh, Lord, I knew it, Lord. Why you put this stuff in me, God? The Bible says that the contention between Paul and Barnabas became so sharp that they decided to part company. You see, they in themselves could see no other way to settle their difference in opinion. So the Bible says that Barnabas decided to take John Mark with him to revisit the believers in Cyprus, and Paul chose Silas to go with him to revisit the believers in Syria and Cilicia. But as I go to my seat, let me leave this last truth about disagreement with you. And the truth is this: though sometimes separation occurs through disagreement, God can overrule and restore what has been broken. Lord have mercy. Where you coming from, Pastor? The Bible lets us know that though the Apostle Paul separated from his partner Barnabas over John Mark's desertion, that eventually, tell your neighbor, eventually, that same Apostle Paul saw the value of having John Mark as a part of his ministry. Where's that found, Pastor Wood? I'm glad you asked. Paul writes in his second letter to Timothy, chapter 4, verse 10. He writes to Timothy and he says, Timothy, only Luke is with me. But Timothy, I want you to get Mark. Get Mark. Somebody say, get Mark. And bring him with you. Because he is helpful to me in my ministry. What are you saying, Pastor Wood? I'm saying that sometimes the person that you write off is the one that you may need in your future. Tell your neighbor, don't write me off yet. You might need me in your future. And you know what else I discovered? I have discovered that sometimes during separation, God has a way of softening up your heart, which makes you appreciate that for what you once disagreed with. Only through the help of God will you and I properly, say properly, deal with disagreement. Now, I just want to know, do you have a disagreeable spirit? In other words, have you made up your mind that there are some people that you will never appreciate? Have you ever said, I'll never talk to them again? Oh, come on. Y'all, look at. Is there a person that when you see him, you automatically get an attitude? Is there anybody that you run into that causes your speech to change in a negative way? Ask your neighbor, are you a disagreeable person? Well, if you are, you're in the right place. Because Jesus can give you an attitude adjustment. He is the only one who is able to soften us, to make us love those who are unlovely. He can help us to even mend fences with those that we have disagreements with. He can use us to let our light so shine before men that they see him working in us. And he can help us to handle properly disagreement.